Test, test, check 1, 2. You know you need unique New York. You know you need unique New York. Does that sound all right? Ah, that's better. You can always tell something's missing when you get isolated results, like AI that's only right for one of your systems. Get AI that can work across your data and applications. Learn more at IBM.com. The AI built for business. IBM.
Today on CityCast DC, in the past few weeks, most of Metro's trains have quietly switched away from having humans do the driving. In other subway systems, this has happened without much drama, but in Metro, automatic driving has a fraught history. NBC4's Adam Tuss has been covering the change. He's here to explain what it means for passenger safety, transportation budgets, and for the drivers themselves. Today is Monday, June 23rd. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Adam.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good to see you, man.
You too.
So listen, the big news this month is that Metro wants to go back to automatic train operation. Can you explain what exactly is happening here?
Yeah, so it's going on right now, whether you realize it or not. Automatic train operation, for all intents and purposes, switched back to ATO, as it's called. That's its kind of acronym, back in December. So it's been running on automatic operations for a while. The green line and the yellow line just went back. And basically what this means is that, for all intents and purposes, a computer is in control of the train. The train is talking to the equipment on the tracks. The track equipment is then talking back to the train and giving it speed commands, telling it when to speed up, when to slow down, where to stop at station platforms, those kind of things. And so the train in and of itself kind of takes over all of those operations. There is still a train operator in the cab, and that train operator is supposed to watch the tracks, still closes the doors. You know, when he looks down, you'll often see a Metro train operator peek their head out the window and look down the platform, make sure that everyone's in the train, and then close the door. So the train operator still 100% has a function here, but the automatic operation is supposed to make things smoother. It's supposed to improve on-time performance, stuff like that. And this is something that this current Metro administration has wanted to put back in practice for some time, and they're finally getting parts of the system back to it.
So they've touted the safety and the speed. Metro periodically goes through real funding crunches. In the long term, is this also supposed to save money?
Yeah. So if you think about it, it's hard for people to really wrap their head around. I don't know if people have been in a Waymo yet or have taken one of those or, have full self-driving on your Tesla. It's kind of the same kind of thing. And what this does is it improves the efficiency, right? So if you're thinking about it, a train operator, when you add the human element into it, you could be stopping and starting a lot more. You might, think you saw something, stop, you didn't see something, and that cuts down on efficiency. What the automatic operations does is the computer knows exactly what's going on, and it's talking to all this equipment on the tracks, and it's supposed to be more of a glide, into and out of stations. It knows what the top speed that it can hit is. It knows when it can slow down, and it basically knows how to perform better on the system. Whether or not people want to debate which is better, that is certainly something that people like to do. But for all intents and purposes, Metro will tell you that this is 100% more efficient and actually will save millions of dollars per year.
And in the long run, is the idea that someday they may not have to pay as many drivers?
So that is the concern of the union. Metro's largest union, ATU Local 689, which represents, most of Metro's frontline workers, is actually now starting to talk a little more about this automated, concern that down the line, 10, 20 years down the line, when automation really is at a level that I don't even think we can comprehend right now, that what it's going to mean is that just like you're hearing about Waymos or, Tesla taxis that are going to be taking people around without drivers, that the trains will be operating without an operator. I will tell you this, the Metro system, even back in 1976 when it opened, was designed to run in automatic mode and had run in automatic mode for decades before the red line crash, which kind of shut it down.
So tell us about that. That was in 2010, I think.
Yeah, 2009, between
2009, sorry.
between Brookland and Fort Totten.
And this, when that happened, it was blamed on something going wrong with the automatic operation, and they pivoted to all drivers again.
Yeah, so here's the misconception about that accident. It actually had nothing to do with the automatic operation of trains. It had to do with a defective track circuit. Now, a lot of this stuff is wonky. What that crash was all about, and it's horrible, and the people who have lived in this area know, what that was like, is that there was basically a faulty section of track on the red line, and there's sensors in the tracks, and they're supposed to tell central control, when certain sections of track are occupied by a train. Well, there was a certain section of track and, ridiculously bad luck that a train had stopped in this section of track and the sensors had gone down. So the train behind it was told that the tracks ahead were clear when in fact they weren't. So it was a track defect that caused that. The automatic operation did not have anything to do with the fault of that.
The automatic operation relies on hearing from the tracks, from information
Correct.
from the tracks.
Yes.
So if that information is not reliable, that's why automatic operation got put on hold.
And this is where some people have concerns about automation, right? When you hear about stuff like this. But Metro will continue to point out to this day that automation is a safer form. It's safer for people to be on the system in automatic mode. And that what happened that day was a track defect and didn't have anything to do with the automated equipment. And, if you go and look at, since December, the red line has been back in automation. You've heard barely a peep about it. And I doubt people recognize that it has. And that's what Metro wants. It doesn't want you to know that it's there, just wants it to be performing. But it is important to know that a train operator can always switch the train back to manual mode if they feel more comfortable or if there's something like single tracking going on.
Why do they need the human driver to still be the one who closes the doors?
So right now, Metro doors open automatically. So when the train pulls into the station, the door opens. You don't want a certain time limit, like 5 seconds until the door closes, because you got to make sure everyone gets in the train. So the train operator gets out, looks down the whole platform, makes sure that there's no obstructions on the doors, and then presses the button to physically close the door themselves. You wouldn't want it to be, you have 5 seconds to get in, and if you don't, you might get caught in the door. Something like that could happen.
But that's surely something that in the long run, some newly invented sensor could probably take over too.
Yes. And I will say that there are plans for platform screen doors on Metro platforms. So that, I think once something like that got put in place, then it would make it easier for doors to be more automated in that mode. Platform screen doors are exactly what they sound like. It's basically a big platform screen, and you can only get in through the screen at the section where the door opens. They have these in places like Europe and Japan.
Is that for safety, so people won't fall in the truck?
Yeah, it's mostly for a safety, thing to prevent people from trespassing on the system. Metro actually has had a problem with people trespassing, and unfortunately people who jump on the tracks. And so that's more of a safety procedure there.
The CityCast DC neighborhood is full of sharp, opinionated Washingtonians, and I mean that in the best possible way. Seriously, at every live taping, somebody always comes up to share a hot take on an episode or the latest DC drama. And honestly, that is one of the best parts of doing the show. So we're teaming up with a new platform called Backroom to help keep those conversations going, and maybe even turn them into real solutions. Backroom brings people together in focused discussion rooms to talk through local issues, exchange ideas, and work towards shared takeaways. It uses AI to support the conversation, not by steering it or adding content, but by helping participants express themselves clearly and cutting through the noise that so often gets in the way of progress. Then, based entirely on the ideas and arguments shared in the room, Backroom proposes a clear, actionable solution that reflects the group's collective thinking. If you've ever wanted to go deeper after a CityCast DC episode, this is the place to do it. Help shape solutions for your block, your neighborhood, your city. Head to the link in the show notes to join the pilot or hop on the waitlist. Backroom, a platform for problem solvers.
DC cares about being green, but it feels like there is always something new to learn. How do I know what can and can't go in the recycling? And how do I collect compost without it stinking up my whole house? The list goes on. Thankfully, Paint Care makes responsibly recycling your leftover paint easy. Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter and reducing waste. 1, buy the right amount of paint for the job. 2, use up what's left, and 3, recycle the rest. To learn more or find a paint drop-off site near you, visit paintcare.org/3simplerules. That's paintcare.org/3simplerules.
This episode is sponsored by Babbel. Have you ever picked a vacation spot based on where you won't need a phrase book? With Babbel, the language barrier no longer has to hold you back. You can start speaking a new language with confidence thanks to Babbel's conversation-based techniques, which quickly teach you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. Babbel has more than a dozen languages available for you to learn at your own pace, with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm David Plotz, CEO of CityCast, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel. What I really love about learning Spanish with Babbel is that it works with me where I am. The app and the website keep track of what I've learned. They help me review what I probably forgot from last time, and always is keeping me engaged with a new challenge based on actual conversations I might have in Spain or Mexico or Colombia. Especially food conversations, because I love food conversations. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to give you 55% off subscriptions, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/citycast, spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So you cover this stuff. I bet you get a bunch of weird questions when you're at parties. But
I love it, though. I love it.
here's the one that I'm curious about. It's like, let's say we're a couple years into this automation. The robots are driving the trains, or the trains are driving themselves, or however we want to call it. What's to stop a driver from, picking up a good book on duty?
Yeah, and there have been instances, prior to that crash in 2009, where riders were taking pictures of train operators who were on their cell phones. And there were pictures floating around. Do you remember, Michael, the website Unsuck DC Metro?
Yeah.
Yes, that was a big thing for a while here in the DC region. And people who are listening to this will know that very well. Well, people would start to send in almost anonymously pictures of train operators who really weren't paying full-time attention. So to answer your question, there is nothing stopping a train operator from doing that. The difference is, since a lot of this stuff started to come to light, Metro has put in a zero tolerance policy. If you get caught on a cell phone, you're fired on the spot. Or if you're distracted, while at the operation of a train, you're fired on the spot. The union would obviously push and pull to get some people back on, but that has been their policy for a while, and that's what they're sticking to.
I mean, the more mundane version of that question is, look, if you are a driver of a train or a car or, any task that requires you to be on top of your game, and a couple years go by and you're really not doing much driving anymore, even though you are empowered to switch it back into driver mode, are they worried about sort of a gradual degradation of skills?
I think it's only human, right? I think you do think about that. What Metro does do is they recertify every year or every so often. Out in Landover, I've been to their certification place where they have these mock trains that you can sit in. It's amazing. And you can actually...
Did you get to mock drive one?
Yeah, I've done it. Yeah, it's amazing. I want to drive an actual one at some point, but I'm not certified to be a train operator. But yeah, you get to sit in there and it's like this simulation, and it's wild because out to the side, they have these screens and it kind of makes you feel like you're in there, and then you can open the window and look out and you can press the buttons and you can do all of it and it responds to your commands. So there's this, constant training that they have to go through. And, to this point, it's been working, but I do think that there is a concern there with, just human nature, and you got to be on top of people. I will say, the newer trains that are coming online, the 7,000 series, and then the next generation of rail cars that come online are going to be known as the 8,000 series. They are loaded with cameras, including in the train operator's cab. So Metro likes to say that it is one of the most wired, if not the most wired system in the entire world, and it really is.
So I was in Paris a couple years ago, and there was a subway strike while I was there. And people said, well, you can take such and such lines because they're fully automated. You just can't take the other ones, which is to say, I think that meant that there's no operator on the train whatsoever because there's no one to go on strike. Are there places where there is a zero operator system?
The one that I would think about even closer to home, and this is so much on a lesser scale, but if you've ever flown into the Orlando International Airport, when you're out on the spokes and then you have to take that train to get back into, the connecting point, the main terminal, those kind of trains don't have any operators on them at all. They're fully automated. So yes, there are systems like that move people around. I don't know the specifics on the Paris Metro. I have ridden it before. It was wonderful, but I don't know the specifics on, how many places do not have physical operators in the cab. That to me would be a bit concerning.
And as far as Metro says, they have no plans to go to a zero operator future.
Not at this time. 20 years into the future, possibly, I guess. And I'm saying that's probably because it has to do with the level of automation and AI that's all cropping up around us now. But yeah, at this particular point in time, they say they have no plans to take the operators out of the cab.
And it used to be that the operator themselves would be the one making the announcement, DuPont Circle,
sure.
Whatever. Are they moving towards all automated announcements or mostly automated announcements?
If you listen on the newer cars, the 7000 series, most of those are, automated at this point in time. But the Metro train operators can still take over. I think it's this back and forth between what they're comfortable with and what they want to do and what is automated and what isn't. So I think there's a mixture still, for sure.
So it is estimated over the long run, this will cost, I think I saw $5.6 billion. I'm guessing the thought is that it'll save money in the long run too. But is the money there now, given all their various challenges?
Well, the equipment has had to be upgraded, that's for sure. And from a funding perspective, Metro has had serious fiscal problems that they've had to address recently. The pandemic certainly didn't help. Metro has a balanced budget going into the next fiscal year. That doesn't mean the year after that it won't be addressed. For the longest time, I would say the problem with Metro, and this goes back to the 2000s, the 2010s, they just stopped maintaining the system the way that they should have. They were just not putting the money into the proper maintenance and taking care of the system the way it was, and it started to degrade. And so that's where they have to be really careful. That's what they have to be, keep it laser focused on making sure that the maintenance of the system is there, and that includes the automatic equipment so that they continue their operations and continue, rider safety, and people got to feel safe when they get on board.
Other than unions worried that their jobs are going to go away, is there anybody who has been against this in an outspoken way?
Other than the safety agency saying that, they need the proof that everything is up to par. Some in the safety group have even called for the NTSB to come in and take a look at this. They have been the main ones pushing back against whether or not this should go into operation. It's funny, when I was in a metro station the other day asking some riders about it, some people are like, oh, well, this is the way that, things are going. You see this with, Tesla and the robotaxis, and others are like, I don't know, one bad mess up and we could be in a pickle. So I would say that, from a rider perspective, they're split, but Metro's doing everything it can from its safety check standpoint to make sure that everything is in line.
And other than the leadership of Metro, has there been anybody in particular who's embraced this, enthused about this?
Well, Metro will tell you that most large transit systems in the country are, in fact, automated, that we are one of the last ones to go back to automation or even go into automation. So a lot of systems like this are designed to run in this mode. So they would, Metro would say, everybody else around the country does it, we should too.
What's next in automation? I mean, assuming they get all these lines running on ATO, are there other pieces of the Metro puzzle that the robots could take over? Are there, what does the future look like here?
They just announced that you can now pay with your credit or debit card at the Metro turnstiles, which is pretty amazing. That's something that a lot of other places have done for a long time, like in New York City, and people were wondering, why can't we use Apple Pay here in the nation's capital? So that's kind of a modernization thing that they've done. I think that once automation hits its peak, and assuming that it's working properly, then you can talk about potentially getting more capacity on the system, getting more trains running on the system, which then, cuts down on crowding. It means that you no longer think about how long it's going to be until another train comes in the system. You walk into the station and you know that it's only going to be a 1 to 2 minute wait. So that's where things really start to build on themselves in this way. I don't think there are any plans for stations to clean themselves or anything along those lines. But, I think once they get the trains up and going, and we should say this is something that they've wanted to do for a while, to get the trains back in automatic mode. So it's taken many fits and starts, and previous administrations in Metro wanted to do this and they just couldn't get it off the ground. But it's here on 3 lines and it looks to be expanding.
When you come into Channel 4, do you take Metro?
Sometimes, yeah. So I'm on the orange line. So my stop is East Falls Church. And then I would take that into Metro Center, transfer to the red line, and then take it up to Tenley Town.
Do you think they know, wow, the Channel 4 reporter who covers us takes this route, we better be extra on our best behavior?
I don't know. I do know that there was one time I was doing a story on one of the train operators who his voice was like butter. It was like golden. His name was Robert Lyle. I don't know if he still works for the system. And he knew I was on the train that day. So he was making extra funny jokes and there was some extra baritone in his voice. There's plenty of people around here who are higher profile, or I'm not calling myself high profile, but there are plenty of high profile people in our area who take the Metro system because it works well. And so I think that they're just trying to do as best they can.
But it's interesting. For years, people who covered the Metro were covering, bad things, covering all the stuff that wound up in unsucked DC Metro.
Yes.
And the story of late has been, check out this cool new thing.
Yeah. So this general manager, who I know very well, has been different. He has not been like the general managers that we've covered before, whether that's positive or negative. I don't work for him. I'm just telling you what I see. He's got a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of ideas, and he seems to be able to get people on his side. The thing that always kind of surprises me about Metro, and it continues to surprise me, is the level that it cuts across. I mean, politics, funding, financials, all sorts of things, diversity, equity, inclusion, all of it. It's like, they're taking my bus stop away. Well, why is that? And people feel slighted and so on and so forth. But one of the things that this particular administration of Metro has tried to do is be very transparent. And I think for a long time, what Metro did was try to sweep things under the rug. And that was the wrong approach, because ultimately we found out anyway, and then it would come to light, and then it looked 10 times worse. There was a recent incident maybe a year or two ago where a train by Reagan National Airport came off the tracks, and it was on one of those aerial structures overhead above Reagan National Airport. We all were fearing the worst because it was this 7000 series car, and they had these wheel issues that were going on for years. And within an hour, they had released footage from the front of the train that showed that there was a physical obstruction on the track. There was a piece of another train that had actually fallen off, and that's what caused the minor derailment. But that's something you would never have gotten from Metro before. And I think they're really leaning into being transparent. And that way they address the issues and go about it from there and build some trust as well. For a long time, there wasn't trust. And it also gets back to what I was talking about previously, that they just didn't maintain the system the way that they needed to for years. I mean, decades and decades of misinvestment and underinvestment in the system. And when you do something like that with a system like Metro that is as large as it is, nearly 100 stations, over 100 miles of track, you're going to get into trouble. And so one of the things that they really have done is really work on their maintenance and upkeep.
Adam, thank you so much for being here.
Always happy to talk about this. I geek out about it.
Hey, before we go, I want to give a big thank you to our newest CityCast DC neighbors, David S. and Susan B. Thank you guys for joining. And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not recommend it to one of the Metro drivers in your life? You can also rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.